When I learnt to drive, my mother taught me. And when my daughters learnt to drive, driving instructors taught them. And the constant theme was we had one teacher teaching the learner. So my theme, picking up from Cliff's presentation, is to focus on this teacher-learner relationship. Now, when you look at this picture here, it was taken 4 weeks ago, and I'm going to talk about her as a learner, even though she's through. She's now qualified. And when we all look at that picture, it, to me, epitomises high tech, a lot of expert knowledge, an awful lot of skill. And my second thought then is, how the heck can we actually get the non-technical important skills be as present, be as dominant, and be as current as that picture shows? So I'm just going to now look about what is a safe clinician. What's the time? Oh, there's a timer on mine, sorry. So what makes a safe clinician? Obviously a training program, and we've heard a lot about that today. And in fact, I think both undergraduate, graduate, and vocational training is taking on board patient safety competencies in their curricula. And the other component, of course, is clinical supervision, which is really what I want to hone in on. And clinicians are required to apply their knowledge in context, and that's been used at word a lot today. And it's the context of the individual patient and within complex human systems. And the way that clinicians have traditionally learned through clinical supervision is the old apprenticeship model. And I just want us to look at this apprenticeship model. In the 19th century, there was one teacher to 2 apprentices, and the Industrial Revolution, there was an explosion in population, which by law meant one teacher could take on 2 apprentices. But if we look at it today, we have one learner can have 4 bosses. It's not one boss, 2 learners, it's one learner with 4+ bosses. Now, if those bosses don't talk to each other, who knows about this learner? Who knows that they have the competence, the skill, the knowledge to progress to the next stage? So when we talk about apprenticeship, it really connotes that 1-on-2, 1-on-3 learning. So what we have, though, is something called situational learning. And situational learning theory comes out of the study of apprenticeship learning. And it has a number of component parts. It's learning through transformation. And in fact, the teacher of the apprentice becomes the environment. So the environment becomes the teacher. And we have the learner learning through participation, through collaboration with a lot of people, not just the senior. And it occurs through social interaction, what we've been talking about today about values, tacit knowledge, intrinsic knowledge. And so they have to learn the walk, the talk, by modelling, by mentoring these supervisors, these clinical supervisors that they are with every day. But it's not a constant supervisor. But I bet if we asked all those supervisors what do they think is most important, they would be talking about their expert technical knowledge. So there's a saying in patient safety, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a change. Well, if we really want to change in those performance elements in relation to non-technical skills, we have to start actually looking at clinical supervision. So this is an educational conceptual framework that I think is really good. I think everyone is very good at, and it achieves it in well-designed curricula, about attitudes, knowledge, and the skills, like preparation to doing tasks. But what is not so easy, and in fact it's darn difficult to do, is to achieve social change where it matters to patients, where it becomes the norm. This is the way we do things around here. There's a culture change. And if we apply that theoretical model to patient safety, let's look at where we are. Here we are. So the attitude pre-contemplation is we know adverse events are preventable. We've known from 1995 in Australia the extent of adverse events, and in fact every other country we know the extent of adverse events. So we contemplate what knowledge do we need to do to prevent it, and we know that. We can develop curriculum, you've all done that. And you can identify the skills here to assess errors and how to change and practice systems. But these last 3, teaching peers, supervisors and trainees to put into practice what they know, how to apply that knowledge is really difficult. And because we don't focus and expect much of our clinical supervisors, my premise is that we just assume they're good teachers, they know how to teach, and we assume they will teach all the values, what I'm going to call non-technical in this discussion, because I really want the stark contrast with technical, that we assume they will pass that on to their trainees. And so whilst we have the hidden curriculum with our medical students, we assume, okay, when they get into the real world, they will somehow get up their knowledge and skills around non-technical attributes and knowledge. But in fact, it doesn't happen. They become, because they're not in a way in the moment, in the environment where a value is of value, where tacit knowledge is really important as being able to look down a microscope and do endoscopy. So the Patient Safety Education Framework, which many of you will know about, does identify competencies, the non-technical competencies, according to where you are in your training. So the competencies are for those under clinical supervision, and there are competencies those who are supervisors, clinical supervisors. So we have a framework available to us. And those competencies are around partnerships with patients, teamwork, risk communication, data collection, adverse events, and professional responsibility and accountability. So the functions of supervision in clinical practice, you all will be aware of these. The ones we have problems with around education, that's where we could emphasise the non-technical knowledge and skills and behaviours and ensure they perform them, but it's missed. It's a missed opportunity. And so practising for safe practice, supervising for safe practice requires knowledge and skills. It's a really serious business being a teacher. A patient-centred approach to patient care, placing a value on the non-technical performance. If a teacher sees a trainee really take shortcuts with consent with a person who doesn't speak English, is it enough just to say, oh, you didn't spend much time with them? But there are competencies around cultural awareness and respect, again, with consent. There's a value on the non-technical performance that I perceive doesn't get the weight given to it that it needs to. And that comes through modelling, obviously, and mentoring. So what are the competencies required? So let's say she is a safe clinician. And she is safe because she's actually engaged with her partners when she was talking to them about this procedure. She's prepared. She knows what she's going to do if there's an adverse event. She's going to be honest about it. She knows that if the person's non-English speaking, it's not enough just to get one of the family members to translate or to just, do simple diagrams, particularly if it's quite a procedure with known complications. She identifies and prevents adverse events and participates in peer review, obviously uses evidence and information, but works safely. And that's around teamwork, understanding human factors, understanding complex organisations, continuity of care, and managing stress and fatigue. Now, they may well just be statements, but there is a competency underpinning every one of those statements for whether you're a junior person, a trainee, or head of a department, or a consultant. So my view is the way forward is to actually, let's start looking at those, I suppose, non-technical, but today the conversation's been around tacit or intrinsic knowledge, skills and behaviours. But in relation to the technical, they really come a poor second place. So the one thing we can immediately do is start reevaluating what we expect of our clinical supervisors. So thank you very much.